Light of his study, Kwame sat frozen, the air thick with a suffocating silence. His hands trembled as he held the phone, the video playing on loop like a grotesque lullaby. He couldn't look away. It was her, Amaka, the woman he had loved with a devotion that bordered on worship. And the man beneath her, Balthazar, was someone Kwame had once bled for, fought for, defended like a brother. The grainy footage was silent, but he didn't need sound. The betrayal screamed louder than words ever could. Amaka's smile, one he thought was his alone, twisted his gut now with revulsion. The way she touched Balthazar was too familiar. The same touch she'd given him on their wedding night. That night, it played vividly in his memory. Laughter, champagne, vows whispered under stars. And now this. The shards of his heart stabbed from within, making it hard to breathe. Was it him? Was he not enough? Questions spiraled as fast as the tears that raced down his cheeks. The weight of humiliation sat heavily on his chest, and with each passing second, Kwame felt a piece of him wither, replaced by something darker, something dangerous. Memories collided in his mind like waves against a crumbling cliff. Amaka's soft giggle in the kitchen, the way she snuggled into him during Harmattan nights, the scent of vanilla she always wore. It all seemed like a dream now, a cruel fabrication designed to lull him into complacency. They had fought before. What couple hadn't? But betrayal like this was different. It rewrote the past with poisoned ink. He stared into the flickering light of the screen, watching the intimacy she shared with Balthazar, a man who had sat at his table, toasted at their wedding, even gifted them a honeymoon package to Zanzibar. The audacity now made him nauseous. Was it during that trip? Had the seeds of betrayal already been sown then? Every laugh, every caress Amaka had shared with him now felt rehearsed, as though she were playing a part in a cruel theater designed just for him. Rage began to boil beneath the surface, slow and thick like tar. But deeper still was shame. The kind of shame that stripped a man bare and left him questioning the very essence of who he was. Kwame paced his study like a trapped animal, his bare feet scuffed against the polished floorboards as he muttered to himself, each word dripping with disbelief. Balthazar, of all people. He recalled the time Balthazar had shown up drunk, babbling about heartbreak and needing a place to crash. Kwame had opened his home. No, he had opened his heart. He had shared not just food and shelter, but secrets, fears, dreams. And this was his reward? Amaka had once called Balthazar brother. That now made Kwame laugh, an empty, hollow sound that carried no mirth. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. It was like a sacred space had been defiled, a temple desecrated. He poured himself a drink, whiskey, 3 fingers deep, and downed it in one go, wincing as it burned down his throat. But it couldn't numb the pain. Nothing could. He collapsed into his chair, staring at the phone again, hand trembling as he hovered over the replay button. But he didn't press it. He already knew the images by heart now, etched into his soul like a branding iron had seared them into his memory. Outside, the wind howled like a wounded beast. The old mango tree in the compound creaked ominously as if mourning with him. Kwame's thoughts turned to his mother in Kumasi, her wrinkled hands clasped in prayer every morning, her endless advice about women and trust. She had warned him, albeit subtly. Kwame, she had said once, Amaka is beautiful, but beauty without humility is like gold without weight. Pretty to look at, but easy to blow away. He had laughed then, brushing off her words as old-fashioned, but now they echoed in his mind, ominous and prophetic. He wondered if his mother would forgive him for not listening. Worse, would she pity him? He couldn't bear pity. That was for the weak. And Kwame had never been weak, until now, until Amaka. The taste of betrayal was bitter, but the fear of becoming a joke in his family, among his friends, among his colleagues, men who envied him for having such a perfect wife, that was a different kind of agony. He could already hear the whispers. Kwame? The one whose wife opened her legs for his best friend. That night, he didn't sleep. He didn't even close his eyes. Instead, he stayed in that chair, reliving moments over and over again. He thought of their first kiss under the acacia tree at the university, how nervous he had been, Amaka had teased him for his shyness, and he had loved her for it. He thought of the time he got laid off, and she stood by him. Or so he thought. Was she already with Balthazar then too? How deep did the betrayal go? The room seemed to shrink around him, the air thick with unspoken truths and ghosts of love. His phone buzzed once, her name on the screen. He stared at it, the way someone might stare at a gun they didn't know was loaded. He didn't answer. Couldn't. What would she even say? It meant nothing? I was lonely. It was a mistake? He scoffed. No apology would unsee what he had seen. No explanation would stitch back his torn pride. The silence continued to ring louder than any apology ever could. And as dawn approached, a new resolve began to bloom beneath the wreckage of his heart. When the sun finally crept over the horizon, painting the walls with dull golden streaks, Kwame stood. He moved like a ghost, his limbs heavy with exhaustion and grief. The light seemed foreign in the room that had witnessed his darkest night. He walked to the window and pushed it open, letting in the chill of morning air. It bit at his skin, waking something inside him, something raw, something vengeful. A thought began to solidify, slow and sure. Amaka had made her choice. But what she didn't realize was that choices have consequences. And betrayal, Kwame thought bitterly, deserved punishment. Not just pain, but understanding. She needed to understand what it felt like to be gutted alive. He wasn't a violent man, but pain could change even saints. The man he had been yesterday had died with that video. What remained was someone sharper, colder. Kwame was not going to let himself drown in pity. No, he would rise, but he would not do it quietly. He would make her see, make Balthazar choke on his own smugness. They had stolen something sacred, something irreplaceable. But he would not be a victim. He would become the storm they never saw coming. Kwame took a shower and dressed deliberately, putting on a crisp white shirt and dark blue slacks. He needed to look composed, clean, unbroken. He checked his reflection in the mirror. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw clenched. But there was a calmness in his posture now, like a soldier about to enter battle. He grabbed his phone, opened the video one last time, and sent it to a locked folder. Then he deleted the visible copy, not because he forgave, but because he needed clarity. And that meant not feeding his rage every hour. Amaka had called again. He ignored it. She had also texted, long messages that began with "Babe, please let me explain," and ended with apologies that tasted like ash. He forwarded the text to a different folder marked evidence and walked out of the house. He didn't slam the door. He didn't shout. He didn't curse the heavens. He just walked, calmly, like a man on a mission, because he was. First stop, Kobe, his childhood friend turned private investigator. If Amaka wanted to play games, he would build the board, and she would lose. Kobe's office sat above a small electronics shop near Lebon. It was early, but Kwame knew Kobe would be in. The man was a creature of habit. "Chairman Kwame," Kobe greeted him with a wide grin that faltered when he saw Kwame's face. "Bro, you look like you've been through a war." Kwame didn't answer right away. He locked the door behind him and dropped into the seat opposite Kobe's desk. "I need you to find out everything about Amaka and Balthazar. When it started, how often, where. I want names, receipts, timestamps. I want the whole ugly truth." Kobe's eyes narrowed. "This about what I think it is?" Kwame only nodded, his jaw tight. "You'll have it. But bro, you sure you want to go down this road?" Kwame leaned in, voice low and deliberate. "I don't just want answers, Kobe. I want to ruin them." Kobe gave a slow nod. "Then we're in business." And with that, the wheels began to turn. While the rest of Accra went about their day oblivious to the quiet rage of a man betrayed, Kwame was laying the foundation for justice. Not the kind served in court, but the kind delivered with precision, silence, and finality. While Kobe began his digging, Kwame headed to his office downtown. His staff greeted him cautiously, sensing the storm behind his smile. He breezed past them and locked himself in his office, ignoring the mountain of paperwork and the blinking light on his landline. He was the director of a real estate consultancy firm, a man known for his discipline and quiet authority. But now, the man behind the title felt like a volcano wearing a suit. He opened his laptop, logged into a joint account he shared with Amaka. She hadn't withdrawn anything yet. Good. But just in case, he transferred the bulk of the funds to a separate private account. Then he checked the deeds. The house, thankfully, was in his name. Amaka had never cared about paperwork, another mistake on her part. Every asset, every investment, he was checking and rechecking. He wasn't going to leave her anything she could twist into a weapon. There was no trust left, no love, just strategy. She'd played him like a fool. Now it was his turn to become the master of the game. He cracked his knuckles and leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting with quiet fury. Let the hunt begin. It was later that afternoon when Kobe called. "You need to come over," he said, voice taut. "I found something." Kwame didn't hesitate. He drove through the thick Accra traffic, every honk and brake light testing his patience. When he finally reached Kobe's office, the man looked grim. "It's worse than you thought." Kobe pulled up a file on his desktop. There were photos, time-stamped emails, even receipts for hotel rooms, dating back a full year. "They've been meeting almost monthly," Kobe explained, "sometimes at conferences, sometimes when you were out of town. But bro, this one is heavy." He pulled up a scanned medical report. Kwame blinked. "What's this?" "It's a paternity test," Kobe said quietly. "From a private clinic in Lagos. Amaka was there last month. The results say Balthazar is likely the father of the child she lost 6 months ago." Kwame felt his world tilt. The miscarriage, the grief, the candlelit vigils. He had mourned beside her, held her as she cried. And now he realized those weren't his tears she had cried. They were Balthazar's, his vision blurred with rage. "Get me everything," he said coldly. "Every single thing." Kwame left Kobe's office with his hands shaking. The city outside looked different now. Every honking car, every passerby, every laughter from food vendors seemed to mock him. The truth weighed on him like a sack of wet sand. A full year, 12 months of deception. And the baby, God, the baby. That loss had nearly destroyed him. He had blamed fate, fasted and prayed, even sacrificed a goat at his father's insistence. He had watched Amaka crumble in his arms and whispered, "We'll try again." Now he knew it wasn't his child at all. The betrayal wasn't just emotional or physical, it was spiritual. His ancestors must be weeping. His dead father, who once held Amaka's hand and said, "Welcome to the family, daughter," must be cursing her from beyond. He felt sick, not just with rage, but with grief. Grief for the love he had lost. Grief for the man he no longer was. There was no undoing this, no fixing it. His marriage wasn't broken. It had been a lie all along, and now all he wanted was to burn the lie to the ground. He was done being the fool in their twisted play. They wanted war, then war they would get. The following week was a blur of movement. Kwame became a machine. He stopped sleeping at home. He claimed a work emergency and booked into the Movenpick Hotel, where nobody would ask questions. Amaka kept calling, first every hour, then twice a day, then once. He never answered. Her voice notes grew desperate, filled with tears and apologies and vague justifications. "I was lonely. I was confused. I didn't mean for it to happen. It's not what you think." Lies wrapped in desperation. He forwarded every message to his evidence folder. He would need them, not for court. No, Kwame had no intention of letting the legal system handle this. He had something else in mind, something poetic, revenge that was slow and thorough. He began reaching out, quietly, to mutual friends. He pretended all was well, invited them to an anniversary party he claimed was a surprise for Amaka. Everyone gushed, clueless. He smiled politely, even joked. But inside his heart was an obsidian blade. Amaka didn't suspect a thing. Her messages turned hopeful. "You're planning something, aren't you? I knew you couldn't stay mad at me." He laughed bitterly. She still didn't understand. The calm before a tsunami is often mistaken for peace. Balthazar was harder to reach. The snake had disappeared to Abuja for business the moment things got suspicious. But Kobe was thorough. He tracked him through his bank transactions and hotel check-ins. "He'll be back this Friday," Kobe said. "At a mutual friend's house party in East Legon." Perfect. Kwame began to prepare. He crafted the illusion with the precision of a sculptor. He hired decorators. He bought matching outfits. He even ordered Amaka a new gold necklace with her name engraved. A final touch of irony. He sent her a message, "Come home Friday by 7. I have something special planned for us. Wear white." She responded with dozens of heart emojis and a voice note sobbing, "Thank you for giving me another chance." He deleted it without listening to the end. That Friday, the house gleamed with candles and fairy lights. Soft music played in the background. Amaka walked in, glowing, her dress hugging her curves. She twirled. "You remembered our song," she squealed. Kwame kissed her cheek gently. Of course, tonight is unforgettable, and it would be, just not the way she imagined. Tonight, masks would fall, and the devil would smile. The guests arrive in waves. Friends, cousins, business associates. Everyone admired the couple, called them perfect, unaware of the storm simmering beneath Kwame's calm smile. He toasted with champagne, arm around Amaka, whispering sweet nothings as she blushed. People gushed, took photos. A photographer he hired captured every moment. "It's for a memory album," he lied. Then, as the night reached its peak, he raised his glass and tapped it for silence. "Thank you, everyone, for being here," he began. "Tonight isn't just a celebration of love. It's a revelation." Laughter, applause. Then he gestured to the projector screen he had hidden behind a velvet curtain. "Amaka, my love, I wanted everyone to see how close we truly are." The screen flickered to life. For a second, everyone expected a honeymoon video or a love montage. Then came the video. Amaka and Balthazar tangled in sin, every frame playing to stunned silence. Gasps, screams. One woman dropped her glass, another man cursed. Amaka stood frozen, her face draining of color. "No," she whispered, but it was too late. Kwame stood beside her, watching her crumble. "This," he said coldly, "is what loyalty means to you." Amaka ran out of the hall barefoot, wailing. The crowd parted like water. No one followed her, not even her friends. Her shame was total, complete. Balthazar, who had just arrived, caught the final seconds of the video. He froze at the door, his face a mask of horror. Then Kwame turned toward him. "Welcome, brother," he said mockingly. "You're just in time to bury what's left of your dignity." The crowd turned on Balthazar next. A few men shoved him. One woman slapped him hard across the face. "After everything Kwame did for you?" she shouted. Balthazar didn't speak. He just bolted, nearly tripping over the steps as cameras clicked furiously behind him. It was chaos, beautiful, orchestrated chaos. Kwame raised his glass again. "To the truth," he said quietly. Then he turned and walked out, leaving a stunned crowd behind. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Justice had been served, not by court or priest, but by a man who refused to die silently in betrayal's shadow. He climbed into his car, started the engine, and exhaled deeply. He was done mourning. Kwame was reborn, not as a husband, but as a man forged by fire. The days that followed were soaked in scandal. Social media exploded. The video had leaked. Kobe made sure of it. Within hours, clips circulated across Instagram, TikTok, even church WhatsApp groups. Kwame's revenge became a trending phrase. Memes were made. Hashtags like #Betrayal at the anniversary and #Wife of Shame flooded timelines. Amaka's name was everywhere. She deactivated all her accounts. Friends she thought were loyal distanced themselves. Brands she partnered with cut ties. Even her own cousin posted, "If you know you don't want the spotlight, don't play games with a man's soul." Amaka was cornered in every way. Her family in Enugu called Kwame, begging him to take down the video. "This is too much," her mother cried. But Kwame's response was ice cold. "Tell your daughter shame is a slow poison. Let her sip." Meanwhile, Balthazar vanished from Accra, his reputation shredded. He was fired from the consultancy firm where Kwame had once recommended him. Even his landlord issued a notice. "We don't harbor snakes here. The walls were closing in on them both. And Kwame was calm. He went back to work. He smiled more. He even slept 8 hours straight for the first time in weeks. Vengeance had not healed him, but it had cleared the rot. But beneath that calm, something still festered. Revenge had burned away the humiliation, yes, but the hole Amaka left remained. Empty, cold. Kwame found himself staring into space sometimes, wondering when exactly love had died between them. Was it after the miscarriage? Was it that night she came home late, smelling of men's perfume and said it was a traffic jam? He hated how much he still missed the version of her he fell in love with. That girl who danced barefoot in the rain, who fed him roasted plantain by hand, who laughed until tears ran down her cheeks. Was any of that real, or was it just part of the performance? His therapist, a stern woman named Abina, had warned him during their sessions, closure doesn't mean forgetting, it means learning to carry the scar with wisdom, not shame. He didn't know if he believed her yet, but he was trying. He had started jogging again, eating better, drinking less, and sometimes on good days he even laughed. But healing was a quiet thing, a lonely thing. It came slowly like the dawn, and often in silence. One quiet Saturday, Kwame found himself at the beach, watching the waves lap the shore. It was here he had proposed to Amaka 3 years ago, on a night lit by lanterns and promise. Now, the same waves that once held memories felt like a cleansing balm. Children ran past screaming with joy. Couples walked hand in hand. Life moved on, indifferent. A soft voice spoke behind him. "You've lost weight." It was Amaka. She wore no makeup, her hair undone, her eyes hollow. Kwame didn't flinch. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I needed to see you," she said, tears already threatening. "To say I'm sorry, truly. I know sorry isn't enough. I was selfish, I was scared, and I hurt the only man who ever truly loved me." Kwame let the silence hang. Then he spoke, voice steady. "You didn't just hurt me, Amaka. You buried something we built together. And you did it with someone I trusted with my life." She wept now. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I regret it." Every day, Kwame looked at her, really looked. And then softly he said, "Good. Regret is the beginning, but it's not my burden anymore." She left after that. He didn't watch her go. Instead, he remained at the water's edge, letting the wind brush against his face. For the first time, he felt a strange lightness. The war was over, not because he had won, but because he had walked away from the battlefield with his soul intact. There was power in that, quiet, steady power. In the months that followed, Kwame rebuilt his life, not around someone else, but around himself. He traveled to Nairobi, spent time with cousins in Abidjan, took cooking classes in OSU. He laughed with new people, flirted without guilt. He didn't date, yet, but he was no longer haunted. Amaka tried once more, sending a long letter through his sister. He read it once, then burned it. Not out of spite, but because some chapters need fire to end completely. His story was no longer about betrayal, it was about resilience. Balthazar remained a ghost, vanished, irrelevant. And Amaka, she faded into whispers, a name that once rang with beauty, now a cautionary tale told quietly at bridal showers. But Kwame lived, fully, loudly, boldly. He bore his scars with pride, because from the ashes of his vow, a new man had risen. Months had passed since the storm that shattered everything, but Kwame never forgot the fire. It was no longer a consuming blaze, more like a furnace tucked deep within, shaping him. He had moved out of their marital home and sold the property, not out of necessity, but out of cleansing. The walls remembered too much. The laughter, the secrets, the betrayal. He bought a sleek apartment overlooking the sea, minimalist, modern, and quiet. Peace became his currency. He didn't rush into anything. When friends tried to set him up, he politely declined. It wasn't that he didn't want love again. He simply knew he wasn't ready to give someone new. The peace is still healing. Instead, he focused on his work, expanding his company into Abuja and later Kumasi. Success became his companion. Yet in the solitude of his nights, he sometimes wondered, had he become too guarded, too cold? He watched people fall in love around him and felt like a distant observer. He envied their innocence, but he also knew what they didn't, that love, unchecked, could carve holes in your soul, and he had vowed never to bleed again without reason. One rainy evening in Lagos during a business summit, Kwame crossed paths with someone unexpected, Chinara, a journalist from Port Harcourt who was covering the event. She wasn't the kind of woman who turned heads with flashy outfits or exaggerated charm. Chinara carried herself with a quiet fire, the type that smolders beneath calm eyes. She asked sharp questions during panels and scribbled notes with furious concentration. Kwame noticed her not because she tried to be noticed, but because she didn't. That night, they shared a drink at the hotel lounge. It was casual, impromptu, but their conversation stretched into hours. They discussed politics, art, grief, betrayal. When he mentioned his divorce, Chinara didn't flinch or pry. She simply said, "Sometimes destruction clears the way for the truest foundations." Something in her tone told him she spoke from experience. He didn't press, he just listened. It felt good, strangely human. That night, he walked her to her room and didn't ask to come in. For the first time in a long time, Kwame left wanting more, not needing more. And that difference felt like healing. Over the next few weeks, they exchanged emails, not texts, emails, long, thoughtful letters that brought back a kind of intimacy he thought he had lost forever. Chinara told stories of her late brother who had died during a campus protest in Enugu. She shared her anger, her confusion, the silence that followed. Kwame, in turn, wrote about his father, about how he taught him to build, but never taught him how to let go. Their words stitched together a fragile but sincere connection. There was no pressure, no performance, just truth. One evening she wrote, "I don't believe people are broken. I believe they're reshaped, and I want to know the shape you've become, Kwame." He read the message 5 times before responding. "I'm not sure of my shape yet," he wrote, "but I want to find out. And I think I'd like to find out with you." It wasn't love. Not yet, but it was something brave, something new. And for Kwame, who once believed his heart had died, that spark was enough to shift everything. He booked a flight to Port Harcourt that same week. When Kwame arrived in Port Harcourt, the air felt different. Thicker, saltier, filled with voices that didn't try to whisper. Chinara met him at the airport in a yellow dress that fluttered like fire in the breeze. She smiled, and for the first time since the betrayal, Kwame's heart didn't clench. It expanded. She took him to places she loved, the crowded bookshop under the rusting bridge, the suya joint by the corner of her street, the tiny art gallery run by a blind sculptor. Each experience felt like peeling off an old layer of grief. That night, as they sat on her balcony eating boli and roasted fish, she finally asked, "Do you still think about her?" Kwame didn't lie. Yes, not with longing, but with memory. Chinara nodded. "That's honest." Silence followed, not awkward, just present. Then she said, "I still think about my brother, especially when I hear students chant for justice." He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. That small gesture said more than a dozen love poems. It told him he was allowed to move forward, to rebuild, not by forgetting the ashes, but by planting something new in them. Chinara wasn't like Amaka. She didn't need grand gestures or constant validation. She loved quietly through action. When Kwame had a rough board meeting, she sent him a playlist. When he mentioned he missed his mother's jollof, she mailed a container of her own. Her affection was deliberate, not performative. Kwame didn't realize how much that mattered until now. They spent more weekends together, her flying to Accra, him flying to Port Harcourt. It was work, but it felt easy, like 2 rivers learning how to flow together. One night, while driving back from a wedding in Asaba, Chinara dozed off in the passenger seat. Kwame looked at her, peaceful in sleep, and realized something terrifying. He didn't just like her, he needed her. But unlike before, he wasn't afraid. He was grateful. Grateful that something in him still had the courage to love again. When she stirred awake and asked why he was smiling, he said, "Because this time, I see clearly." Chinara laughed. "You're becoming a poet now?" He smiled back. No. Just a man who finally knows the difference between love and illusion, and in that moment he knew, whatever happened next, he would never be that broken man again. The wind was unusually warm that night, and Kwame couldn't sleep. Not because of the heat, but because something about Chinara's new case gnawed at his gut. It started as a gentle tug in his chest, and had now evolved into a drumbeat behind his ribs. Chinara had mentioned a woman, her prime suspect, who was closely tied to a powerful figure, a man named Chief Okoye. Kwame remembered how her eyes shimmered with both pride and concern when she spoke about it. She used to be someone important to him, Chinara had said vaguely, sipping on her ginger tea. That was the first time it occurred to Kwame that the universe had a wicked sense of humor, because in her voice, in her subtle disgust, he caught something, familiarity. The same contempt he once nursed for a woman who tore his world apart. Amaka. The morning after, the sunlight broke like glass across his living room, but Kwame sat unmoved, piecing together fragments of conversations he'd had with Chinara about this mysterious woman. Chinara had described her as beautiful but chaotic, charming yet utterly dangerous. She spoke of broken homes, betrayed lovers, and the cloud of suspicion that hovered around her like a personal storm. That's when it hit him like thunder to the spine. Chinara's target was none other than Amaka, his ex-wife, the very woman who had betrayed him with a smile and shattered his pride with cold, rehearsed lies. He didn't know whether to laugh, scream, or warn Chinara, but he did none of those. Instead, he reached for his phone and stared at Amara's picture, his missing niece, hoping this cruel twist of fate would somehow lead him to her. Kwame had sworn never to see Amaka again, let alone speak her name. Her betrayal had been surgical, clean, deliberate, and deep. But this new twist stirred dormant instincts in him. Chinara, unaware of the storm she was approaching, had been following Amaka for weeks. She tracked her movements to a mansion on the edge of Epe, owned by Chief Okoye, a flamboyant philanthropist with secrets buried deeper than his vaults. And Amaka, she was more than a mistress. She was the chief's shadow, his confidant, his enabler. She knows everything, Chinara had said one night, sprawled across the couch with files scattered like feathers. Kwame nodded but said nothing. He had to be sure before opening that wound again. The confirmation came in the form of a grainy surveillance photo. Chinara showed it to him over breakfast. That's her, she said. Amaka. She's the one pulling strings behind the scenes. Kwame froze. The universe didn't just have a wicked sense of humor, it was downright cruel. His past and present were colliding like galaxies, and the wreckage would be biblical. Chinara saw the flicker in his eyes and frowned. You know her? She asked, voice low. Kwame hesitated, then told her everything, the affair, the disgrace, the pain. Chinara's face paled, her mouth hanging open as the gravity of their situation settled like lead between them. Chinara sat back in disbelief, trying to comprehend the tangled web fate had spun. You mean to tell me the woman I've been investigating is your ex-wife? She whispered. Kwame nodded, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. The same woman who tore my heart out and danced on the pieces. Silence reigned as the realization washed over them both. Chinara's professional integrity collided with her personal life in a head-on crash. We need to be careful, she said eventually. Chief Okoye isn't just a trafficker. He's protected. The kind of man who can erase a life with a phone call. Kwame exhaled, the weight of the situation mounting. Then we don't just expose him, we destroy him. But the mission wasn't just about justice anymore. Kwame's niece Amara had been missing for over 6 months. A bright girl with dreams of becoming a nurse, she vanished one morning without a trace. The family had searched, prayed, and even bribed the police, but nothing came of it. Now, with Chief Okoye's name linked to abductions, Kwame's fury reignited. He'd once walked away from chaos, but now he sprinted back into it, driven not by revenge, but by the hope that Amara was still alive. He called Kobe, his childhood friend, and a tech wizard with a shady past. I need everything you can find on Chief Okoye's properties, especially the one near Epi, he ordered. Kobe didn't ask questions. He owed Kwame too much to refuse. What Kobe unearthed was both chilling and damning. The estate in Ipe wasn't just a mansion. It was a fortress with underground bunkers and security systems meant for war zones. But more importantly, Kobe intercepted blueprints and satellite images showing a basement-level medical wing and multiple locked chambers. It's not just a house, Kobe explained, sliding the evidence across the table. It's a prison, Chinara paled. If Amara's in there, she started but couldn't finish. The thought of what those captives, what Amara, might be enduring shattered them both into pieces too sharp to touch. Against all reason, Kwame knew what he had to do. He had to face Amaka. The woman who once held his heart like a trophy now held the keys to a nightmare. Chinara arranged the covert meeting through a fabricated identity. Amaka thought she was meeting an oil tycoon interested in import services, unaware that she was walking straight into her reckoning. When she entered the dimly lit bar, wearing her signature red heels and poison-sweet perfume, Kwame stepped from the shadows. Their eyes locked, and the past rushed in like a flood. "Kwame," she gasped. He didn't smile. "We need to talk," he said, voice like frost. Amaka was stunned. She tried to recover her composure, but her arrogance slipped like wet silk. What are you doing here?" she asked, shifting nervously. Kwame leaned in, eyes sharp. "You're working with a monster. You're helping traffic people. My niece is missing. And you," he paused, fury trembling in his throat, "you might be the only person who can lead me to her." Amaka's expression cracked. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Not about Amara, but Kwame wasn't buying it." "You knew what Chief was doing," he said, "and you let it happen." Amaka broke. For the first time in years, the mask she wore slid off and shattered. "I didn't have a choice," she cried. "He threatened me, my family. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Kwame leaned in coldly. "Save the tears. I need answers. And if you really want redemption, help us bring him down." It took hours, but Amaka finally cracked, spilling everything: locations, schedules, aliases, bribes. Chenara recorded every word, every detail. The evidence they gathered was explosive, enough to rock the nation. But it wasn't enough until they found Amara. They launched the raid under cover of night. Kobe hacked the security system, while Chinara and a small private team of ex-military operatives stormed the compound. Kwame stayed in the surveillance van, watching every frame with eyes that burned. The rooms were dark and cold, filled with terrified girls, some barely in their teens. And in the last locked chamber, Chinara found her, Amara, starved, weak but alive. When Kwame saw her face on the screen, he broke. The scream that tore from his throat was raw and victorious, and shattered something primal in him. Chief Okoye was arrested the next morning in a blaze of media frenzy. Chinara's article went viral. Her exposé titled, "The Shadows of Power," shook the nation to its knees. Chief Okoye's empire crumbled, and Amaka, though spared jail time due to her cooperation, was sent to a private rehabilitation center. Her addiction wasn't just to men, it was to chaos, to deception, to the thrill of danger. The doctors called it a psychological spiral rooted in abandonment and greed. Kwame never visited her. He couldn't. Some doors must remain closed. Months passed. Amara began healing. She returned home, resumed her studies, and though her smile was quieter, it was real. Chinara moved in with Kwame, and together they built something neither of them thought possible after such darkness: hope. One evening, under the flaming sky of Accra, Kwame knelt and proposed. "Not because you saved my niece," he said, "but because you helped me believe again." Chinara said yes, tears in her eyes. Their wedding was small but radiant, filled with laughter and scars that had learned to heal together. As they danced beneath fairy lights, Kwame glanced at the stars and whispered a silent vow to never let the darkness win again. But he knew in his heart, evil never sleeps. It simply changes faces. And when it returns, he and Chinara would be ready. The night air was soft, scented with jasmine and distant bonfires. Kwame sat on the porch of their new home, a quiet estate just outside Aburi. Chinara had taken to gardening, something she never imagined herself doing before. She claimed it grounded her. But Kwame knew it was more than that. After everything, the investigation, Amara's rescue, Chief Okoye's takedown, something inside her had changed. She wasn't just a journalist anymore. She had seen evil, touched it, and come back with scars she never spoke of. Even now, she slept with the lights on. She hadn't told him, but he'd noticed. The shadows in her eyes, the tremble in her breath when thunder cracked too close. A letter arrived one rainy morning. It was hand-delivered, not mailed. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Amaka, sitting in a rehab garden, staring at something or someone out of frame. Tucked beneath it was a small note she knows it's not over. Kwame's hands went cold. He rushed to Chinara, but she was already holding another copy of the same photo. It had been sent to her newsroom anonymously. "They're watching her," Chinara whispered. "Or watching us." Kwame didn't want to believe it. After everything they'd been through, hadn't the nightmare ended? But Chinara's instincts said otherwise. She started digging again, and what she found chilled them both to the bone. Chief Okoye may have been the head, but his operation had deep roots. A syndicate, a council of 6, hidden in plain sight, who controlled everything from child trafficking to high-level political extortion. Chief Okoye was just a face, and now that face was gone. Someone else was wearing the crown, and whoever it was, they were making moves again. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the rehab center, Amaka was changing. Therapy stripped away her masks one layer at a time. At first she fought it, lashed out, threatened the staff, demanded to leave. But something in her had broken during the raid. The sight of those girls, the way Amara had looked at her with haunted eyes, those images stuck. Amaka began to confess not just to the therapist but to herself. Her past wasn't a straight line, it was a spiral. Every man she clung to was another escape, another wound she didn't want to face. But now, for the first time, she wanted to heal. Chinara paid her a visit one day, against Kwame's protests. She needed closure, or perhaps clarity. The room was dark, the air thick with antiseptic and old shame. Amaka looked up, surprised. "You," she said simply. Chinara sat across from her, eyes steady. "I came to ask if you knew what's happening outside. Someone sent me a picture of you. With a message." Amaka's smile faltered. "They found out I talked," she whispered. "They're coming for me." Chinara's blood ran cold. "Who?" she demanded. Amaka leaned in, voice trembling. "The one they called the Jackal. He's taken Okoye's place, and he's hunting anyone who was involved in the takedown." Kwame gathered his team, Kobi, Chinara, and a few trusted allies from the raid. They had to find the Jackal before he found them. But the man was a ghost, no digital trail, no confirmed sightings, only rumors. Of ritual killings in Tamale, of illegal shipments moving through Takoradi disguised as humanitarian aid, of girls going missing in Kumasi again. "He's rebuilding," Chinara said, pinning photos to the wall of their office. "And faster than we expected." Kobe traced a signal to a warehouse in Cape Coast. When they raided it, they found something horrific. Dozens of passports, ID cards, even blood-stained uniforms. But no people. Just a message, spray-painted on the wall: 1 head falls, 6 rise. The symbolism wasn't lost on them. The Council of 6 wasn't just real, it was active, and it had declared war. That night, Chinara received a call from a blocked number. A distorted voice on the other end spoke only one sentence: "The Jackal wants his queen back." Then the line went dead. Kwame tightened security around the house, posted guards, installed cameras. But fear crept in through the cracks. Chinara began having dreams again, of chains and fire, of Amaka screaming her name through shattered glass. Kwame held her tighter every night, but he knew what was coming. They weren't just survivors anymore, they were targets. Amaka was moved to a high-security mental health facility deep in the Volta region, but even there, she wasn't safe. One night, a nurse found her catatonic, gripping a bloody feather and murmuring a name over and over: Tariq, Tariq, Tariq. The name meant nothing to the staff, but Chinara's face went pale when she heard it. Tariq was one of the council's top enforcers, known only through whispers in the underworld. A former mercenary turned soul hunter, he was the Jackal's right hand. And if he was back in the country, Amaka wouldn't be the only one in danger. The battle lines were drawn again. Kwame and Chinara decided they had to strike first. With Kobe's help, they traced Tariq's financial backdoor to a luxury casino in Accra, run under the alias The Red Lion. Under the glitz, it was a hub for laundering blood money. Disguised as wealthy gamblers, Chinara and Kwame entered the casino, slipping past guards and whispering to informants. They weren't looking for cash. They were looking for the Jackal's shadow, and they found it. In the VIP room, a hidden hallway led to an office. Inside, walls were lined with pictures of Chinara, Kwame, Amaka, Amara, even Kobe, marked, numbered, targets. They barely escaped before security was alerted. Back at their safe house, Chinara broke down. They're everywhere, Kwame. This isn't just a syndicate, it's a machine. And we just rattled the engine. But Kwame took her face in his hands, eyes fierce. Then we break the machine, gear by gear, screw by screw. He called Kobe. It's time to call in the ebony files. Chinara turned sharply. You kept those? She asked. Kwame nodded. Every dirty secret I've ever come across. All the names, all the skeletons, time to cash in. And just like that, the war began again. Kobe had warned Kwame never to reopen the ebony files. It was more than a dossier. It was a graveyard of secrets. Names of politicians who had children trafficked for power rituals, pastors who funded mercenaries, CEOs who paid to silence journalists. It was a maze of corruption spanning decades. But now the lockbox was open, and Chinara stared at its contents in cold silence. These people, she whispered, they're the ones funding the Jackal, aren't they? Kwame nodded grimly. And if we expose even one of them, we start a war that won't be fought in courts. It'll be fought in alleys, in newsrooms, in our homes. Chinara picked up a file marked Senator Demore, 1999 Accra mass disappearances. He's still in office, she said. Kwame looked away. And still untouchable. But that was about to change. Because with each page, they were sharpening weapons no one could see. Information, leverage, truth. The only bullets powerful enough to wound giants. They created a plan, 6 major figures, 6 files. Take them down one by one. No mercy, no room for hesitation. And at the heart of it all was the Jackal, the man without a face. But he had a trail, and it led through fire. Their first target was Bishop Malachi Owusu, the shepherd of the largest megachurch in Ghana and a top member of the syndicate's inner circle. His Sunday services filled stadiums. But the ebony files revealed what happened behind his gilded pulpit, illegal adoptions, laundering of tithe money, and quiet funerals for rescued girls who didn't survive his underground network. Chinara posed as a grieving mother desperate for help. It was dangerous. If the bishop suspected anything, she could vanish before the end of the day. She walked into his glass tower, palms sweaty, heart pounding. Kwame was outside, in a surveillance van with Kobe, monitoring everything through hidden audio. God is merciful, Bishop Malachi said smoothly as he ushered her in. But forgiveness requires donation. Chinara played her part. She wept, she begged, she offered a daughter she wanted rid of. The bishop didn't flinch. He handed her a card with an address in Ho-Volta region. Take her there, we'll cleanse her. That was all they needed. The sting operation commenced that night. Police, press, Chinara's media team, everyone pounced. Malachi was arrested mid-sermon, his congregation screaming, his robe stained with disgrace. The church burned the next day, not by fire, but by truth. But their victory didn't come without a price. That same night, Kobe's apartment was torched. He barely made it out alive. Flames licked at his skin as he crashed through a window and fell into the alley below. When Kwame found him, Kobe was trembling, blood on his cheek, whispering, "They know we're coming." The Jackal had sent a message, and it was scorched into every wall of Kobe's home. 6 must fall. But the lion bleeds next. It was a declaration of war. And Kwame knew what it meant. He was the lion. They weren't just exposing the council. They were poking the head of the beast. The jackal was watching, waiting, planning his counterattack, and he didn't play fair. Meanwhile, Amaka's condition grew worse. Ever since she whispered Tariq, her mind had started to unravel. The therapist said it was trauma resurfacing, but Chinara suspected something darker. A woman who once ran with devils doesn't break unless another devil is whispering again. One night, Chinara visited the facility and found Amaka drawing symbols on her wall with her own blood. They were strange, tribal, ancient, and familiar. Chinara snapped pictures and sent them to Kwame. Kobe confirmed it immediately. They were markings from the old guard, an ancient secret society believed to protect the council. But the symbols were incomplete. "She's trying to warn us," Chinara said. "She's not breaking, she's remembering." But remembering what? Kwame decided it was time to go deep. He reached out to a contact no one knew about, a ghost named Tenda, ex-Mossad, now a mercenary specializing in counterintelligence. Tenda agreed to meet in Cotonou under strict secrecy. He brought news, terrible news. "The jackal has Amaka's mind under control," he said. "Psychotropics, hypnotic triggers. He's using her memories to lead you astray, or worse, to lead you to him." Chinara's fists clenched. "Why?" she demanded. Tenda looked her dead in the eyes. "Because you are his prize, and Kwame is his revenge." They moved fast. The second target was Justice Mensah, Ghana's youngest Supreme Court judge, and the man who dismissed over 24 trafficking cases due to lack of evidence. But the ebony files had his phone logs, money trails, and an encrypted file that Kobe decrypted. Messages from Tariq, thanking him for legal invisibility. Chinara went live with the story. The nation erupted. Protesters gathered outside the court. Mensah tried to deny everything, but the messages spoke louder. He was forced to resign within 48 hours. But on the third night, he vanished. His body was found hanging under the Adomi Bridge. A note pinned to his chest, 2 down, 4 to go. The jackal wasn't hiding anymore. He was leaving signatures. Kwame and Chinara stopped sleeping. They were either planning raids or protecting their families. Amara was sent abroad under Kobe's protection. "You've seen too much, little one," Kwame told her as she wept in the airport lounge. "Stay alive. That's all I ask." Amara clung to him before boarding, whispering, "Come back for me." Chinara buried her face in her hands. This wasn't just justice anymore. This was war, one that kept rewriting the rules. And then it happened. The jackal made his first public move. A live stream hijacked Ghana's national television. A masked man stood in a warehouse surrounded by 6 girls bound and gagged. "This is what happens," he said, voice distorted. "When you play gods among shadows, you become prey." The feed cut. Chaos erupted. The entire country froze. And Kwame knew the endgame had begun. They had days, maybe hours, to find those girls. Chinara began calling in every favor she had ever earned. The hunt for the jackal was no longer strategic. It was personal, and it was bloody. But they had one last card to play, Amaka. She had started speaking again, but only in riddles. "The stars above Kumasi don't sleep. They whisper where the jackals eat," she mumbled one night. Chinara followed the clue, and they found it. An abandoned observatory outside Kumasi converted into a ritual shrine. Inside, they found cameras, chains, and symbols everywhere. Fresh blood, no girls. But they were close, very close. They could feel it, and the jackal could feel them too. The air around the Kumasi observatory was different now, heavy, metallic, like it remembered screams. Kwame crouched beside a scorched altar, his gloved fingers brushing over dried blood that still whispered secrets. Chinara paced behind him, pistol at her hip, files in her hand, and a tightness in her jaw that refused to ease. They had found chains, beds, recording devices. No girls, but evidence of what had been done to them. "He's moving them again," Kobe murmured from the corner, scanning blueprints pulled from a hidden floorboard. "There's a pattern in the locations, always near historic sites, always tied to Ghanaian royalty or sacred law." Chinara turned sharply. "He's not just trafficking people. He's building mythology. Amaka sat in the surveillance van, silent and trembling. Her mind had returned piece by piece, like broken glass reforming a stained window. But one image haunted her more than any other, a boy. 12, maybe 13, dark eyes, a red mark across his cheek. "I think he's the jackal," she whispered. Or, "The first version of him," Chinara turned. "What do you mean?" Amaka's eyes filled with tears. They trained him, groomed him, turned him into a god of fear, and when he died, they made a new one. This jackal isn't one man, it's a legacy, a mantle. The room fell into dead silence. The realization hit like lightning. They weren't chasing one man, they were chasing a mask. The final piece came from an old friend of Kobe's, a smuggler named Dusty, who owed Kobe from prison days. He handed them a USB drive and a warning. The final location's near Shire Hills, old shrine, forgotten. But they're not just keeping girls there, they're planning something bigger. The footage on the drive confirmed it. A caravan of trucks, armed men, chains, explosives, a ritual circle, and in the center, the same masked figure from the live stream. They're planning to sacrifice them, Chinara whispered, nausea washing over her. And stream it. They're going to make a show out of it. There was no time for finesse. They called in every contact, disgraced officers, rogue soldiers, burned journalists willing to die for a story. Kobe deployed drones. Chinara mapped out entrances. Kwame suited up. "We're not just stopping a ritual," he said. "We're ending an era." Amaka insisted on coming. "He'll recognize me," she said. "He might hesitate. That could buy you seconds." Chinara shook her head. "He might kill you." Amaka only smiled. "He already did. This is my resurrection." Shire Hills was a tomb under moonlight. Ancient rocks rose like silent sentinels around the desecrated shrine. The team moved in silent formation, eyes scanning every shadow. Chinara had a camera crew positioned on a hilltop. If anything went wrong, the world would see it. But they weren't prepared for what they found. Inside the shrine was a circle of girls, pale, drugged, marked, and at the center stood the jackal, not masked but barefaced. He was young, unscarred, almost beautiful. "Kwame," he said with a smile, "welcome to my theater." It was a trap. The floor collapsed beneath them, gas hissed. Lights exploded. Suddenly the air was chaos, gunfire, screaming, darkness. Kwame and Chinara were separated. Kobe lost signal. Amaka stood face to face with the jackal and he didn't flinch. "You came," he said softly. "Mother always returns." Amaka blinked, confused. "What?" He stepped closer. "I was the boy, the one you left behind in Abori. My father sold me to Chief Okoye. You turned your back on me. I became what you made." The memory crashed into her like a blade. She had abandoned the boy once, thinking he'd survive. He hadn't. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. The jackal touched her face. Too late. But then, gunfire. Chinara burst in, bloodied but alive, dragging a wounded guard behind her. "Let her go," she screamed. The jackal turned, laughing. "You think bullets can stop an idea?" But Kwame was already behind him. "No," he growled. "But fire can." He threw the flare. The shrine ignited in seconds. Gasoline had been poured in advance. The jackal screamed, drawing a blade, slicing into Kwame's side before Chinara shot him 3 times in the chest. He staggered, fell, laughed as flames consumed him. "Cut off the head," he whispered, "and 2 grow in its place." The girls were freed. The shrine burned. The footage went global. Protests erupted in every major African city. The Council of 6 fractured. Some fled, others were found dead. The syndicate crumbled under the weight of light. But not everyone made it out. Kobe was caught in an explosion while holding back the jackal's final wave of guards. They buried him beside the ocean. Chinara cried for days. Kwame held her until their bodies ached. "He saved them all," she whispered. "He died a lion." Amaka was never the same. She returned to rehab voluntarily, requesting isolation and therapy from monks. "I have to learn how to forgive myself," she said before disappearing into the hills. Chinara gave her one of Kobe's rings. "He said you were the bravest coward he ever met." Amaka smiled. It was the first true smile she'd given in years. Kwame healed slowly. The scars on his body were nothing compared to the ones on his soul, but he found peace in the chaos. Amara returned. She enrolled in law school. "I want to fight monsters like you did," she told her uncle. Chinara published a book, Into the Jackal's Den. It became a bestseller, but she never glamorized it. She told the truth. The blood, the cost, the ghosts that never leave. One night, a year later, Kwame and Chinara stood beneath the stars at Kobe's memorial. The wind whispered through the trees. "You think it's over?" Chinara asked. Kwame looked at the sky. "No. Evil never dies. It sleeps. It waits. It finds new faces." She reached for his hand. "Then we'll keep watching." He kissed her forehead. "Always." And from the shadows beyond the tree line, a figure watched, a new mask in his hand, and the eyes of the next jackal beginning to glow. It was dawn when Kwame finally let go of the last weapon. He stood on the beach near Cape 3 Points, barefoot in the sand, holding a small box. Inside were the remains of the ebony files, pages scorched, drives smashed, names buried. Chinara watched silently as he placed it on the water's edge, poured gasoline on it, and lit the match. Flames leapt like spirits breaking free. "That's it," he whispered. "It's over." Chinara wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. "You did it, Kwame." "We did," but Kwame shook his head. "We just survived it. Justice, that's for those who come next." They moved inland, bought land, built a home. It wasn't extravagant. It was safe, clean, surrounded by trees. Chinara returned to writing, not investigative journalism, but fiction. She wrote stories that helped people heal. Women who found their voices again, children who refused to disappear. Kwame opened a shelter named after Kobe, the Lion's Rest. It became a sanctuary for the lost. Girls who had no names, boys too scared to speak. They came and were welcomed, no questions asked. And each one left stronger, safer, whole. Amara graduated top of her class. She worked at the shelter for a year before joining the Special Investigations Bureau. But she did things differently. She listened. She believed. She didn't carry her uncle's rage, but she carried his heart. On the day she was sworn in, Kwame cried. Not tears of grief this time, but pride. The kind that felt like sunrise after years of storm. Amaka never returned to Accra. She stayed in the mountains, among the monks, growing herbs and tending to the sick. Her letters arrived rarely, always signed only as her. In her final note to Chinara, she wrote, "I don't ask for forgiveness, but I've learned to forgive myself. That's enough for one lifetime." Chinara kept the note in a frame on her desk, not as a trophy, but as proof that even the broken can find their own version of peace. The country slowly healed. The headlines changed. New scandals rose. New leaders fell. But in the quiet places, in the corners where darkness once reigned, there was light, because of a man who refused to stay bitter, a woman who risked everything for truth, a girl who came back from the dead, and a boy named Kobe, who gave his life so others could breathe freely. Years passed. Kwame grew older, grayer, but never weaker. One afternoon, he sat on the porch with Chinara, their fingers entwined. "Do you think we'll ever be truly safe?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I don't believe in safety. I believe in readiness and love and purpose." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then we've already won." And when Kwame died many years later, surrounded by family, friends, and the echoes of the lives he saved, the skies did not cry. Instead, they opened wide, golden, vast, eternal. His final breath was a whisper. We finished the story, and the wind carried that whisper like a blessing over every girl rescued, every file burned, every monster unmasked. And finally, the world was quiet.